Saddam Hussein was the fifth president of Iraq from 1979 to 2003. He had already been a de facto ruler for several years and suppressed a number of movements during his time in power. His government was repressive, and his rule was marked by numerous human rights abuses, including an estimated 250,000 executions and killings. He also ordered bloody invasions of Iran and Kuwait. In 2003, the United States and their allies invaded Iraq in order to depose Saddam. The accusations that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which justified the invasion and war, remain controversial to this day. Saddam was captured on December 13, 2003, after he had gone missing from public view. He was designated high-value target number 1 and was pulled out of a tunnel system. After being placed on trial and sentenced to death, Saddam's execution remains a subject of debate. What exactly happened during his execution is still unclear. Join us today as we discover and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Between July and December 2003, Task Force 121 conducted 12 raids in an attempt to find Saddam Hussein, which were unsuccessful. Additionally, 600 other operations were carried out against various targets. These targets were then interrogated, and, on December 1, 2003, a former driver of Saddam's mentioned Mohammed Ibrahim Omar al-Muslit as Saddam's right-hand man. He was known as the Batman, and over the next 2 weeks, 40 members of his family were interrogated in an effort to find his whereabouts. However, on December 12th, a raid on a house in Baghdad led to the capture of Omar. He revealed the location of Saddam, and further intelligence gathered pinpointed his location to a remote farm south of Tikrit. The operation to capture Saddam, Operation Red Dawn, was launched, and 2 sites, Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2, were investigated. There were approximately 600 soldiers involved in the mission, including cavalry and artillery. The forces initially cleared 2 objectives, but Saddam was not found. As the soldiers were finishing their investigation, one soldier kicked a piece of flooring aside, revealing a spider hole and a small opening. He was about to throw a grenade into it, thinking it might lead to a tunnel system with hostile forces, when Saddam Hussein suddenly appeared. The soldier struck Saddam with the butt of his M4 carbine, disarming him of his Glock pistol. Saddam offered no resistance and surrendered. He was then taken to the mission support site, transferred to Baghdad, and held in custody at the airport. Along with his pistol, Saddam had an AK-47 and approximately $750,000. After this, Saddam was put on trial. His first hearing took place on 1 July 2004. During this hearing, he stated that, "This is all theater. The real criminal is Bush." He defended Iraq's 1990 invasion of Kuwait, referring to the people there as dogs, who were trying to turn the women of Iraq into prostitutes. His language was crude and he did not hold back. However, Saddam was charged with a number of different charges the following year. He was accused of the killing of 148 Shiites from Dujail after a failed assassination attempt. Saddam questioned the legitimacy of the court and said, "I do not recognize the body that has designated and authorized you, nor the aggression, because all that has been built on false basis is false." Saddam claimed to be the president of Iraq, and there were many instances throughout the trial where he showed defiance towards the authority of the court. At one point, he told them to go to hell and even refused to enter the courtroom. Saddam Hussein complained about his imprisonment and claimed that his American captors had tortured him, saying, "I have been beaten everywhere on my body, and the marks are all over me." On the 5th of November 2006, he was sentenced to death by hanging for the killing of 148 Shia from Dujail. When the verdict was announced, he screamed, "Long live the people! Long live the Arab nation! Down with the spies! God is great!" It was expected that appeals would continue for years, but on December 26, 2006, his appeal was rejected and the death sentence remained in place. No further appeals were permitted, and it was stated that Saddam would be executed within 30 days. The decision had to be approved by the Iraqi president, but it could not be reversed. Saddam requested to be executed by a firing squad rather than by hanging, claiming that it was legal as a military execution, and he wanted to be treated as a soldier. The commander-in-chief of the Iraqi military, Saddam Hussein, was denied his request for clemency 2 days before his scheduled execution. In a letter published just before his death, he urged the Iraqi people not to hate the citizens of the countries that had invaded Iraq, but rather to focus their anger on the leaders who had ordered the attacks. He expressed his willingness to die as a martyr for his cause. In the hours leading up to his execution, Saddam had his last meal of chicken and rice and also drank a cup of hot water with honey. The execution was scheduled for 6 a.m. local time and took place at the joint Iraqi-American military base in Qasemain, Baghdad. Saddam was executed alone, without the presence of his co-defendants. According to reports, the Americans had initially planned to delay Saddam's execution by 15 days, but eventually carried out the execution as scheduled. The day before the event, the Prime Minister's office provided all necessary documents for the process. They asked for it, and the Americans changed their minds when they saw the Prime Minister being very insistent. It was a case of finalizing details. It was reported that the U.S. had no direct involvement in Saddam's execution after he was handed over to the Iraqi government. There were reports that Saddam was submissive before his execution and that he was carrying the Quran. However, a witness disagreed with this, as it was reported that Saddam shouted, "Down with the invaders," as he entered the chamber. And when asked if he had fear or remorse, he replied that he had none, as he had spent his life in jihad fighting aggression. He remained defiant as the noose and rope were placed around his neck. After the rope was secured, he shouted, "Do you consider this bravery?" As he stood there, an Islamic prayer was recited, and one witness told Saddam, "Go to hell." He then replied, "What is Iraq?" Another masked guard said, "You have destroyed us, you have killed us and made us live in destitution." Saddam responded, "I have saved you from destitution and misery, and destroyed your enemies, the Persians and the Americans." But then, the deputy prosecutor tried to calm the situation, saying, "Please stop. This man is facing execution." Saddam began to recite the Shahada twice. Near the end of the second recitation, the trapdoor opened, and Saddam was left hanging. There was a loud sound as he fell through the trapdoor, and his neck was broken. After several minutes, a doctor approached Saddam's body and checked for a heartbeat. The doctor declared that Saddam had died at 6:03. There were rumors that after Saddam died, his body was stabbed several times, but there is no confirmation of this. This was disputed, and other witnesses claimed that it did not happen. His body was then buried at his birthplace near the bodies of his two sons, Uday and Qusay, on December 31, 2006. The tomb in which his body was buried was later destroyed, and it was claimed that his body had been removed by a Sunni tribal group before the tomb was destroyed. There was some criticism of Saddam Hussein's death sentence, with some believing it to be unjust and others considering him a martyr. There was also criticism of the trial that he had, considering it to be unfair. However, ultimately, Saddam Hussein was a man who led a repressive regime in Iraq and was responsible for the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people. The circumstances of the invasion of Iraq continue to be debated today, with it being considered that hundreds of innocent military personnel lost their lives in an invasion with little justification. The issues in Iraq were not resolved with Saddam's execution, and they continued for several years. Thank you for watching. To support our channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching.